Thank you LG for sponsoring today's video. So I've reviewed a ton of gaming monitors over the past year, but 6 months after reviewing it, my main display I keep going back to is LG's 4K 240Hz 480Hz dual mode OLED monitor. For myself as a wannabe minimalist, it just ticks so many boxes for my day to day, it's hard not to love. From gaming to creation to enjoying media and using an expansive 4K resolution for my day job. Apart from that, this monitor truly has some key features that makes this practically two monitors in one, especially for competitive PC gamers. With a new Diablo 4 expansion just around the corner, the new PlayStation 5 Pro coming up real soon, and finally dipping my toe back into streaming, this monitor does cover me for just about everything. Now, as awesome as this monitor looks physically, one of the key things I absolutely love about it is the fact that this is a 32-inch 4K display with an OLED panel. Simply put, OLED is quickly becoming a favorite amongst gamers for its performance, alongside media enthusiasts simply due to how good it looks. Compared to an LCD display, OLED is able to physically turn off or illuminate individual pixels, which simply provides one of the best images available. With HDR10 support, colors pop incredibly, especially alongside the literal blacks since this is an OLED panel. With that, this does also have VESA True Black 400 certification. I recently jumped into anime shows for the first time with some great viewer recommendations, and I seriously blasted my way through Demon Slayer. It might be a crime to say it, but Demon Slayer might actually be better than Dragon Ball Z. Still, I've watched way more media on here lately trying to strike a better work-life balance, and I can't help but appreciate how good this display looks. This display does have an anti-glare coating as well, which does help diffuse any harsh lighting you might have in your space. In my case, I can easily manage lighting in my area, so this turns out pretty well. Now, I don't personally calibrate my displays, nor really measure peak brightnesses and such, so it does give me peace of mind knowing that this is factory calibrated right out of box, and even after 6 months, it's been an absolute pleasure to watch content on. This also lends incredibly well to my content creation, but more on that in a bit, since even over creation or media, my favorite thing to do on this monitor is definitely gaming. For reference as to what I am gaming on, my PC is an RTX 4090 pre-built, which simply crushes any game I want to throw at it. I can't say I'm a resolution slob by any means, but native 4K gaming is definitely something special on its own, and even more so with this monitor. And while I've been more casual than I used to while playing games like Overwatch, when it comes down to any sort of FPS games, I'm always using the 480Hz dual mode, which I can activate with just one tap of this button on the bottom side. On a display like this, it truly is overkill for competitive games, especially with its 0.03 millisecond response time, so despite being absolutely trash at video games, at least I know it's not my monitor's fault. Likewise, since this does have NVIDIA G-Sync support, there's zero graphical issues or tearing since each frame displayed on this monitor is in sync with my GPU. Again, the minimalist in me particularly loves the dual mode feature, mainly since it's like having two monitors in one, and considering I used to have a secondary setup entirely for competitive gaming, or I would sometimes physically swap out my monitor, I love having this feature with just a tap of a button. Now, 1080p at 32 inches is my actual preferred way to play, but you can also resize this to either 24 or 27 inches depending on your preference. For my hybrid gamers out there just like myself, if you're not running FPS games, the native 4K 240Hz mode is an absolute pleasure to game on, and it goes without saying high fidelity games look awesome. Likewise, for anybody who's into consoles or a massive Sony exclusives game fan, the PlayStation 5 Pro will be here in about a month, and I'm super pumped to play it on here. Till then, my regular PS5 Slim still gives an incredible gaming experience. And sure, while consoles do cap at 120Hz, it's still a great experience on here, especially since the HDMI 2.1 ports lend well to console features like variable refresh rate and auto latency mode. I will say too, and I'm unsure why, I do find the HDR experience on console to be way better than my Windows PC, so this is usually my go-to for watching any sort of media. From a game standpoint though, I've always preferred titles like Call of Duty on console more. I'm unsure if it's a nostalgia thing from the Xbox 360 days, but it's still an awesome time. I'm also not really sure if I'm going to be getting Black Ops 6 after getting absolutely cooked by 12-year-olds in the beta earlier. Let me know your comments if you're going to be getting Black Ops 6, I'm not sure how I feel about it. Apart from that though, the more cinematic titles like Ghost of Tsushima or The Last of Us have been incredible on here. What really adds to the console experience too is the fact that this monitor has the Pixel sound speakers built right in, making it so you don't really have to have an external set of speakers on your setup, nor do I really need to wear a headset if I don't want to. Let me make this clear as well, these speakers aren't simply okay like you typically see in a monitor, these are quite actually incredible. And not that a YouTube video will really do it much justice, but here is a quick sound test. So yeah, absolutely incredible speakers if you were wondering. Apart from that, one thing I've recently using a little bit more is the DTS-X headphone jack. As somebody who's always using Bluetooth or dongles for media, it's easy to forget how good content and music actually sounds when you are hardwired. I'm currently in the market for some in-ear monitors, so if anybody has a good suggestion, please let me know in the comment section. Apart from that, depending on what you're doing, there are some sound profiles here you can swap between if you need to. What I've also grown to appreciate with this display as well though is the fact that text actually looks really good on here, which has sometimes been an issue for some OLED displays in the past. On this display at least, text pretty much has zero fringing and it is tack sharp. As somebody who spends 9 hours a day as an accountant during my day job, this is absolutely incredible. And jumping back to that 4K resolution, this works incredibly well when it comes to scaling on Windows, which I can definitely appreciate since it pretty much gives me 4 small 1080p displays while working during the daytime. When it comes down to my creation work as well, while I'm not always laying down the most cinematic or riveting content, I do edit most of my videos on this display, which does a great job, especially when it comes down to color grading. Again, I don't really measure these sort of things, but the spec sheet does tell me 1.5 million to 1 contrast ratio alongside 98.5% DCI P3 color gamut coverage, so that pretty much covers me for any sort of coloring that I might need to do. I can't really say I'm good at color grading, but if this helps, I'm all for it. Now obviously the image on this display looks incredible, but as for how this monitor looks in my setup, again, as somebody who simply prefers minimal looking tech, this absolutely ticks all the boxes. This display is near edge to edge from a bezel standpoint, and low-key my favorite thing about it is the fact that it's chinless with zero branding. And while I frequently put my displays on a monitor arm, the stand on this display is near perfect, giving me an absolute incredible range of motion between height, tilt, pivot, and even rotation if I need it. I can't say I'm much of a fan of blade style stands, and this fits perfectly on my Grove made desk shelf, which is always a bonus. For cable management as well, there is a decently sized hole through the back of the stand, which does allow me to keep my cables tucked through the back and out of sight. And while you're probably not going to see the back end of this monitor depending on your setup, it still looks cool enough with some Ultra Gear branding in this purplish color. There is customizable RGB on the back end too. While it's not super bright, it is still noticeable in a dark room, and you can customize this color to your preference. As for ports, you've got 2 HDMI 2.1 ports that I mentioned before, and for me, I've got this going to my PS5 and soon to be PS5 Pro, alongside this BenQ dock, which is my single cable connection to my MacBook or work laptop. And of course, you do have that DisplayPort 1.4, which is currently going to my RTX 4090 PC, which is how I will be playing that new Diablo 4 expansion. If you do want to connect some peripherals between your display and PC, there is a hub here with 2 USB-A ports, which will go through USB upstream directly to your system. Lastly, again, there's that DTS headphone jack I mentioned, which I didn't particularly use for the first 4 months of owning this monitor, but that recently changed like I mentioned. With that, naturally, with any sort of productive work or certain types of gaming, you might be worried about burn-in over long periods of time. To combat that, this monitor does have screen shift, which does bump your image around by a pixel in a circular motion so that no pixel is retained for an extended period of time. Likewise, to take that a step further, you can have pixel cleaning completed automatically, which will help keep your panel health in top shape. Luckily, the display does have a 2-year warranty as well, even for burn-in, so it's one less thing to worry about. With that, it's hard to think where a display like this might go from here in terms of improvements. If I'm really trying to think about who this display for, I can say it's nearly for anybody. The competitive gamer will benefit from the 480Hz mode, the 4K gamer will love it in all its 240Hz glory, and everything simply looks amazing. Again, as a wannabe minimalist, the fact that this display looks minimal in and out of its own, it has the built-in speaker, plus the dual mode feature, is the primary reason this display has been my main one since my initial review. But let me know what you guys think about this display in the comments section. Is it really the perfect monitor? I'll have this display linked down below alongside everything else in my desk setup. Again, a huge thanks to LG for sponsoring today's video, and thanks for watching to the end. Till next time.